You figured it out. The thing everyone was talking about. The problem everyone was struggling with. You saw the answer in seconds, and for a moment you felt that familiar spark, the excitement of understanding, the thrill of clarity. You turned to share it, you opened your mouth to explain, and then you saw their faces. Blank, confused. That polite smile that means they stopped following 3 sentences ago. So you did what you always do. You simplified. You dumbed it down. You cut your insight in half, then in half again, until what came out of your mouth was a pale shadow of what was in your mind. They nodded, they moved on, and you stood there with the rest of the thoughts still trapped inside you, unspoken, unshared, alone. This has happened to you 1,000 times, in classrooms where you learned to stop raising your hand, in friendships where you learned to hold back the things that actually excited you, in relationships where you learned that being fully yourself was somehow too much. And somewhere along the way, you made a quiet decision, a decision so subtle you might not have even noticed it. You decided that connection required reduction, that belonging meant becoming smaller, that the price of not being alone was leaving parts of yourself at the door. And so you have been paying that price for years, maybe decades, shrinking yourself in every room, performing a simpler version of who you are, watching your real thoughts from a distance, like a stranger looking through a window at a party they were not invited to. You are surrounded by people, but you have never felt more alone. And the worst part? You cannot figure out why. You have done everything right. You have been friendly, you have been accommodating, you have listened more than you have spoken. You have made yourself easy to be around. So why does it still feel like there is a glass wall between you and everyone else? Why do you leave social situations feeling emptier than when you arrived? Why does connection seem to come so naturally to others while you are still solving for it like an equation that never balances? Let me show you what is actually happening, because this is not a social skills problem. This is not an introversion problem. This is not a problem with you at all. This is a paradox built into the architecture of an intelligent mind, and until you see it clearly, you will keep trying to solve the wrong problem. Here is the paradox. Intelligence allows you to see further, but seeing further means seeing things that others cannot see. And seeing things that others cannot see means having experiences that others cannot share. And having experiences that others cannot share means being fundamentally, structurally alone in ways that have nothing to do with how many people are in your contact list. This is not arrogance. This is geometry. If you are standing on a mountain while everyone else is in the valley, you will see a different horizon. You can describe what you see, you can point toward it, but they will never see it from where they are standing. And after enough failed descriptions, you stop trying. You learn to talk about the valley. You learn to pretend the mountain view doesn't exist. You learn to perform normalcy so convincingly that even you start to forget what you actually see. But forgetting doesn't make it go away. The loneliness just goes underground. It becomes a constant hum beneath the surface of your life, a quiet ache you cannot name, a hunger that no amount of social activity ever satisfies. Let me go deeper. There is a specific type of loneliness that intelligent people experience. Researchers call it existential isolation. It's different from ordinary loneliness. Ordinary loneliness is the absence of people. You feel it when you are physically alone and wish you had company. The solution is simple. Find people. Make plans. Be around others. But existential isolation is something else entirely. It is the presence of people combined with the absence of connection. It is being at a party, surrounded by conversation and feeling like you are watching from behind glass. It is having friends who care about you, but who have never actually met the real you. It is the devastating recognition that even in your closest relationships, there are rooms in your mind that no one else has ever entered, and probably never will. This type of loneliness cannot be solved by finding more people. It is not about quantity, it is about depth. And depth requires something that intelligence makes almost impossible. Finding someone who can meet you where you actually are. Here is what nobody tells you about high intelligence. It is a filter, a very effective one. It filters out the majority of potential connections before they even begin. Not because you are judging people, not because you think you are better, but because genuine connection requires mutual understanding, and mutual understanding requires similar processing. When your brain works at a different speed, when it makes connections that others do not naturally follow, when it asks questions that others have never considered, the pool of people who can truly meet you shrinks dramatically. You are not being picky, you are being accurate. You have learned from painful experience that surface connections leave you feeling worse than being alone, that pretending to be satisfied with small talk is exhausting, that 1 hour of real connection is worth more than 100 hours of performed socializing. And so you wait, you hold out, you choose solitude over simulation, and the world calls you antisocial, the world calls you difficult, the world calls you too intense. But the world does not understand what it is asking of you. It is asking you to be nourished by food that does not contain the nutrients you need. It is asking you to feel connected in situations that leave you empty. It is asking you to perform satisfaction while starving. Of course you withdraw. Of course you isolate. Of course you protect yourself from interactions that cost more than they give. But here is where it gets complicated. The protection becomes a prison. The walls you built to keep out superficial connection also keep out the real thing. You become so guarded, so accustomed to hiding your depth, that when someone actually capable of meeting you shows up, you do not let them in. You have forgotten how, or you do not trust it, or you are so convinced that no one can understand you that you never give them the chance. This is the deepest layer of the paradox. Your intelligence created the loneliness, and then it convinced you that the loneliness was permanent. It gave you evidence, years of failed connections, years of being too much, years of simplifying yourself and still being misunderstood. Your pattern recognition did what it does best. It identified a trend, and it drew a conclusion. I am fundamentally alone. No one will ever truly understand me. Connection at the level I need is not possible. This conclusion felt like truth. But it was just a story based on incomplete data. Because here is what your intelligent mind missed. You were looking for connection in environments designed for average. You were trying to find depth in pools built for waiting. You were searching for your people in places where your people do not go. And when you did not find them, you concluded they did not exist. But they do exist. They are out there right now, feeling exactly what you feel, thinking exactly what you think, wondering if they are the only ones who experience life at this frequency. They are in quiet corners of the internet. They are in unexpected places. They are often hiding, just like you, because they reached the same false conclusion. They decided they were alone, and so they stopped looking. Two people who could have completed each other's sentences, passing like ships in the night, both convinced they were the only ship in the ocean. This is the tragedy of intelligent loneliness. It is not that connection is impossible, it is that the belief in its impossibility prevents it from happening. So what do you do?
How do you escape a paradox that your own mind created? The first step is the hardest. You must risk being seen. Not the simplified version, not the palatable version, the real version. The one with the strange thoughts and the intense questions and the observations that make people uncomfortable. You have been hiding that person to avoid rejection. But hiding is its own rejection. When you perform a smaller version of yourself and someone connects with that performance, you have not actually been seen. The loneliness remains because the real you is still in hiding. The only way out is through. You must let the real you be witnessed, even if it means some people leave, even if it means being too much for some rooms. Because the goal is not to be acceptable to everyone. The goal is to be fully known by someone. And that requires being fully visible first. The second step is changing where you look. Your people are not distributed evenly across the population. They cluster. They gather in specific places, fields that attract complex minds, creative spaces, intellectual spaces, places where intensity is the norm rather than the exception. You have been trying to find water in the desert. Move to where the water is. This is not elitism. This is efficiency. You have limited energy. You have limited time. Stop spending it in places where you have to shrink to fit. Start spending it in places where your full size is welcome. The third step is accepting the math.
You will not connect with most people. This is not failure, this is statistics. If you process the world differently than 95% of people, then 95% of people will not fully understand you. This is not sad, this is just true. But 5% of the population is still hundreds of millions of people. Your people are not rare in absolute numbers. They are just rare in any given room. Stop expecting every room to contain them. Start building a life that increases your chances of finding them. The fourth step is learning to tolerate being seen. This might be the most uncomfortable part. You have become so skilled at hiding that visibility feels dangerous. When someone actually sees you, your first instinct is to deflect, to minimize, to make a joke that pushes them back to safe distance. You must learn to stay, to let the moment land, to tolerate being known without running. This is a skill. It requires practice, and it requires believing, truly believing, that what they are seeing is worth seeing, that the full you is not too much, that the depth you have been hiding is not a burden, but a gift. Here is what I want to leave you with. You have been solving the wrong problem. You thought the question was, how do I connect with people? But the real question is, how do I let people connect with me? The loneliness you feel is not because you are unlovable. It is because you are unhidden. The version of you that could be loved, truly loved, at the depth you need is locked away, protected, safe, and completely unreachable. You built that cage yourself, and you are the only one who can open it. This is terrifying, I know. You have been hurt before. You have shown yourself and been met with blank stares. You have risked depth and been punished for it. But those were the wrong audiences, not the wrong you. The right people will not ask you to shrink. They will not be intimidated by your intensity. They will not make you feel like too much. They will feel like they have finally found someone who speaks their language. They will look at you like they are coming home. And in that moment, the loneliness that has been your constant companion will finally lift. Not because you changed, but because you finally stopped hiding. You were never too much. You were just in rooms that were too small. Find bigger rooms. Let yourself be seen, and watch the loneliness transform into the connection you have been starving for your entire life. It exists, I promise. You just have to stop believing the lie that it does not. Now, go find your people. They are waiting.